Chapter 16. Friends in Low Places. Hey Killer, how would you like to see another version of you? Nightmare asked. The dark skeleton sat on the bed, eating from the to-go box with his fingers, as he'd forgotten to grab any utensils from the casino. They had found some bathrobes in the closet and covered themselves. Even though the robes were a little big, they performed the decency they sought well enough. After soaking and wringing out their bloody clothes, there were some hangers from the closet they used to hang up their outfits to dry. Killer stood by the window, spying out at their handiwork that night. Another version of me? I think I'd have an existential crisis. Well, not you exactly. Nightmare paused to scoop up a bite of rice. A different world, a different timeline. Different enough that the sands we'd meet would be nothing like you. Killer folded his arms and tilted his head. Is that what you did? Am I a different version of you? Maybe. I'm still trying to figure that out. A lot of people you knew might have equivalents in my world, but I certainly wasn't named Sans, nor are there any other Sans where I'm from. You're more like a friend I met, someone who saved my life 2 years ago. His name used to be Sans, but I just call him the librarian. Killer came to sat at the end of the bed, cross-legged and facing Nightmare. So you did have a friend before me. What happened? Why aren't you hanging out with him? I think I might have overstayed my welcome. He lives in a world that's just a giant library. He helped me catch up on all things modern and taught me about the multiverse. Nightmare hung his head, feeling his appetite subside. I started to sense frustration from him whenever I approached. He kept dropping hints that I should spend more time in my multiverse. I figure some time away with new friends will help from straining our relationship. Heh, the way you talk about this guy sounds like you like him. Killer grinned, leaning on his hand. Nightmare felt his face get warm. I mean, he did save my life. He's a little cold, though. I don't think anything more could happen between us. Well, shame on him. I think you're a catch. Shoulders tightened. Nightmare looked away. Cut it out. Besides, I don't think I'm good for romance right now. I still got a lot of feelings about something. Right. Anyway, back on topic. Would you like to explore the multiverse with me? See what else exists out there away from our worlds? Killer smiled from cheek to cheek. I'll follow you wherever you may lead. My life is yours. Besides, there's nothing left for me here. The way he said it kept making Nightmare feel like it was some kind of declaration of love. He told himself he'd try to ignore it. Maybe Killer just had a flirtatious personality. Want any of this? It's cold. Nah, I can throw it away, though. Thanks. Lights out, they'd get tucked into bed. Luckily, the bed was big enough that the space between them kept it from being awkward. After a long day of exertion, it didn't take Nightmare long to drift to sleep. He'd find himself in a familiar dream, frightened at first as the static creature from his childhood stalked him through the woods. However, as dawn began to break, Nightmare found himself climbing the incline to the grove where the tree still stood. Dream slept peacefully by the trunk, unbothered by the terrors in the night. However, as Nightmare reached him, he realized it wasn't the ground, but the stump of the tree that Dream rested upon, trapped in an eternal slumber. Nightmare woke to the smell of coffee. At some point, he sprawled out in bed, touching the warm space where Killer had been laying. Sunlight peeked through the curtains. Sitting up, he yawned and looked to the kitchenette where Killer stood, already dressed, fixing the complimentary coffee. How do you like your coffee, boss? Killer looked over. Black. Nightmare rubbed his left socket before scratching around the roots infesting the right side. Boring, said Killer before pouring a ton of creamer and sugar into his own cup. Heh, you have your coffee just like my brother does. Killer paused. Nightmare sensed the shot of adrenaline in his soul. You have a brother? Yeah, sorry, I don't want to talk about it. The dark skeleton wrapped his arms around his knees. Neither do I, Killer declared before bringing him his cup. Just the way you like it, boss. Nightmare chuckled. Thanks. Even though the coffee wasn't too great, the pleasure of it still eased his bones. It seemed that Killer might have overdone it with his own cup, only taking a sip before his face twisted in disgust. He set the cup aside. So, what's the adventure today? Huh? Oh, right. With a snap of his fingers, the magic circle appeared. A few more taps, and it expanded to show a vague map of where he'd been so far. Mapping AUs was more of a theoretical science than a hard one. It was an attempt to make something from fourth-dimensional space display in 2D. But Nightmare figured it was good enough for his own notes. Here's one. It's called Horror Tale. Oh, sounds spooky. Wait, the AUs have names? Nightmare nodded. Sure do. Every world has a name. Some will have the same name, but additional descriptors to make it different from its twins. As Nightmare checked the code to make sure nothing would immediately kill them upon arrival, Killer stared, his mind turning. If universes have names, does that mean someone designed them? Nightmare shrugged. It's possible, but I don't know. If I ever met who made me, I'd stab them. It made Nightmare suddenly laugh as he grinned at his friend. Yeah, no kidding. As Nightmare examined the code, sipping his coffee, Killer would grab his clothes from the closet and bring them to him. Though it was a little silly for Killer to turn around, given they'd taken a bath together that night, Nightmare still appreciated the respect shown as he got dressed. Man, I'd kill for some breakfast right now, said Nightmare, now standing as he continued searching through AU codes. That can be arranged, Killer smirked, spinning his knife on his finger. I heard folks say it was monsters, government intelligence covering it up. 3 men stood at the door, looking into the hotel room where both skeletons stood. They didn't try to hide the blood from last night covering the floor, their clothes still stained with it. As the first man's jaw dropped, as well as the backpack hanging from his arm, Killer grinned, raising his knife. Nope, Nightmare grabbed his hand, lowering it. We're out of here. As the 3 men screamed, both skeletons sank into Nightmare's shadow and completely disappeared. The first thing Nightmare felt was the bitter cold wind. They emerged from the shadow in a frosty forest, one that Nightmare had no doubt Killer would be familiar with. Oi, is this Snowden Forest? Not your Snowden Forest, said Nightmare, dismissing his magic circle. Feet dipping through the snow, both made their way to the clearing and the barely used path. I teleported us before I could locate Sans' position, so we'll have to search for him. Heh, I wonder how similar this world will be. Just within reach loomed the shabby town of Snowden. A large weathered wooden sign greeted them, but where Welcome To should have been, painted over it said, Stay the fuck out of. Nightmare had seen countless versions of the little town from books in the Dimensional Library. For him, he was paying more attention to Killer's reaction. Damn, this place looks like shit. Worse than yours? My Snowden is a vacation resort compared to this. It appeared many of the buildings and homes had been broken into, drawers ripped open, walls smashed. This place had seen years of neglect and decay. An unsettling feeling of doom hung in the air, something Nightmare sensed, but for which there was no source. There was one building that appeared occupied, the light of lanterns glowing through the windows at Girlby's. Windows had been smashed and haphazardly covered with cardboard. Outside the building on the ground was lined wooden pikes. Standing guard were 2 shabby-looking bird monsters carrying rudimentary spears. Both looked exhausted, emaciated. Didn't notice the 2 skeletons approaching for a long moment. Hey, someone's there! Who are you? Where did you come from? The monster stood, brandishing what wasn't more than sharpened sticks. Nightmare could feel their limbs shaking from how his roots drank in their fear. Greetings! We're but humble tourists! He held up his hands. Fuck you! Don't try to make us laugh! Sans? Sans, is that you? Clearly both had their eyes focused on Killer, whose face twisted from the unintentional dead naming, but he decided to play along. Yeah, it's, me. What's going on, fellas? Why you got Grillby's boarded up like the apocalypse? Both monsters looked confused, the smaller speaking up. He looks like Sans, but the way Sans looked before all this started. Right, sorry, some things have happened. Mind jogging my memory? Killer scratched his cheek. But if that's Sans, then who came back from the lab 3 years ago? The taller bird monster whispered. There's no way Papyrus would have mistaken an imposter for his brother, God rest his soul. Nightmare sensed guilt and sadness from Killer at the mention of that name. Clearly they were lacking too much information to effectively impersonate this world's Sans. Forgive my friend, gentlemen. His name is Sans, but clearly he's being confused with someone you know. My name is Knight, and we really are just exploring the underground. We didn't expect to find Snowden in such condition. City slickers. How come you two don't sound like you're starving like the rest of us? Well, I think both of us would appreciate some breakfast, Nightmare shrugged. At that, both of them laughed. Apparently they did like jokes. What do you think this is? Is this funny for you? Did the Queen send you to fuck with us just as we're about to turn to dust? Oh, okay, they didn't find it funny. But Nightmare hadn't been joking. He felt his soul grumble, begging for carbs. Before either of them could say anything, the door opened to reveal a horrific-looking bear monster. So too did his body look malnourished, his lips curled back in strain, his wide eyes glossy and lacking life. What's going on out here? There's two new guys, skeletons, but they aren't the brothers. They act like they have no idea what's going on. The bear monster stared out at Nightmare and Killer, his mind working for several seconds. You two don't look like you're starving. Nightmare's soul gave an audible growl. He clutched his chest in embarrassment as Killer laughed. The timing was too good. I don't think we're gonna find breakfast here, boss. Perhaps we should move on to a world that does have food, then come back, Nightmare groaned. Oh, wait a second. The bear monster raised a hand. You two know where to find food? Nightmare wasn't exactly sure what would happen if he indulged this, but it's not as if they had anything to lose here. Yeah, we do. You guys want to come with? No way, he's lying! Squawked the bird monster. Suit yourself, Nightmare shrugged, drawing out his magic circle and searching for another AU. Anything you crave, Killer? Maybe some toast with strawberry jam. Just toast? Tell me you're gonna eat more than that. I'll see how my soul feels once I can get the toast down. They're mocking us, said the other bird monster. Wait, what if they're not lying? Came a woman's voice from inside. Oh, how many folks are there with you? Nightmare asked the monsters. There's 6 of us left. No one else, except Sans. We don't know where he is, said the bear. 6, huh? I should be able to swing that with my open portal. He didn't want to take these monsters to an AU that would be too jarring for them, so he found a world that still drifted in the lower regions of the world tree. A minute more, one of his roots swung around, creating a shadow portal leading to a rainy street on an autumn afternoon. Nightmare stepped into the portal, Killer following right after him before he poked his head back. Make your choice now! It's not easy to keep this thing open! What the hell is that? Some kind of sci-fi thing? Are they aliens, like from another world? I smell fried potatoes! There's food there for sure! In moments, what appeared to be a woman rabbit monster, a woman dog guard, and a horrific-looking grillbee stepped out of the old restaurant. I'm the mayor. I should make sure it's safe, said the bear monster coming to the portal. Still not the mayor, one of the bird monsters mumbled as the bear poked his head through. Right next to the portal was a restaurant the styles of a 1960s diner covered in glossy red paint and chromatic edgings. At the top, a bright sign read, QC's Diner, though the lights illuminated C's D kept flickering. It's a restaurant! A real functioning restaurant! Cried the mayor, stepping through. It's also the surface! Guys, come on, we're free! Hurry up! Nightmare called to them too before looking at Killer. Mind heading inside and letting them know we have a party of 8? Will do, boss! Killer saluted before heading in. One by one, they coaxed the rest of the monsters through before Nightmare closed the portal. The monsters were in awe, looking at the sky, until Grillby screamed in pain from the pouring rain covering his head. We need to get him inside now, said the dog guard, an arm around his back as she rushed him in. As they entered, Nightmare was hit by the smell of cigarettes and age. Several monsters already dining looked at the erratic party in awe, everyone going quiet. Ah, who the hell? Y'all look like you just got out of a war movie, said the purple rabbit monster behind the desk, wearing a red waitress uniform. She looks just like... a rescued monster started to say. Take those 2 booths over there and mind your manners. We'll get you your order soon. Y'all better have money. We don't take kindly to dine dashers, said the waitress, carrying a giant tray of food to one of the tables. Food! Food! We must be in heaven! One of the bird monsters tried to leap at the tray, but Killer grabbed him. Oh no, we don't have any money, said the dog guard. I do, said Nightmare. From the shadow of his pocket, Nightmare dug out several large coins. He dropped them from one hand to the other to show he had plenty to spare. All right, don't bite my hands off before I take your order, said another waitress, a large but young cat girl with white fur and black hair. Nightmare and Killer would scoot into a booth together, Nightmare against the wall as the mayor and the rabbit woman sat across from them. Getting a better look at them, the rabbit woman's right eye was horribly infected and would probably never function again once treated. I still can't believe this is happening. Who are you two? We're travelers who move between dimensions, but we'd appreciate it if you kept that a secret, said Nightmare. He picked up the card labeled Specials, which had been attached to the condiment tray. I brought you to a world where monsters were never sent underground. I bet you could make a new life for yourselves here. The mayor shook his head, scratching his temple. It's hard to believe myself, but if we're dead and this is heaven, it's a hell of a lot better than where we were. In the booth next to them, the two bird monsters began enthusiastically ordering pancakes, bacon, eggs, and the list goes on. We really were looking for Sans, though, said Killer, folding his arms on the table. We, heard about him before. Mind telling us what was happening in your reality? You two really don't know, huh? Said the mayor, his brows fell. About 7 years ago, the core stopped working. Without the core, we couldn't produce power or food anymore. Everything had to start being rationed, and well, we ran out of food about a month ago. That's also when the worst of things happen. What do you want? Said the bored cat waitress, who already had 3 whole pages of her notepad written out. Oh God, I'll have anything. I'm so hungry I can't think, said the rabbit woman. As they were speaking, Nightmare slid the specials card to Killer, quietly pointing out the chocolate chip pancakes to him. Bring us a platter, a plate each full of scrambled eggs, bacon, sausage, potatoes, toast, and... Nightmare said before he looked at Killer and the specials. Oh, yeah, I want these chocolate chip pancakes, please, Killer said cheerfully. Do you want coffee? The waitress moaned. God, please, yes! Both monsters said some variation of. Anyway, what can you tell us about Sans? Nightmare asked. Sans, right, the mayor continued. Before 3 years ago, Sans had always been extremely helpful to the community. He helped with rationing food and keeping morale up. But then, one day, he went off to see Queen Undying and came back with a smashed skull. He told us Undying had fully destroyed the core and planned to murder us all. The waitress came back around with a tray of mugs and a pot of coffee, pouring each out for them. At his word, we fortified the town from any invasion that might come from the east, but Sans wasn't the same after that. About a year ago, something didn't seem right with Sans and Papyrus. They were both getting taller, bigger. Papyrus hit his head against the top of Grilby's door a few times, not realizing his body's changes. And they always had food, spaghetti, bread, and other pastas. Pop said Sans was finding the food somewhere and planned to figure out how to feed the rest of us. As the waitress walked away, the rabbit woman spoke up. We didn't see poor Paps after that. He never returned to Gribbly's. Ever since we hauled ourselves up in town, monsters had steadily gone missing. We thought they might be disappearing into the woods to meet a quiet end, and we were afraid the same happened to Paps. We searched Papyrus and Sans' home. Then we checked the shed. Both of them paused to drink their coffee, a dread passing between them. Killer tilted his head, glancing at Nightmare. We found buckets of monster dust being kept there, and piles of clothes for everyone who had gone missing, including Papyrus, said the mayor. The shed had been converted into something like a miniature bakery. Turns out monster dust works effectively well as a flour substitute. Jeez! Wait, you can eat monster dust? Never even thought to try that, said Killer. Nor will we, that's disgusting, said Nightmare, partaking of another cup of coffee. Okay, but I wonder what it tastes like, Killer mused. Absolutely not, I wouldn't allow something so horrendous. Okay, Killer shrugged. Sans saw us, and ever since we've been trying to defend ourselves from him, said the rabbit. But he kept picking us off one by one until we were the only ones left. He's more beast than monster now. So he's big and he's mean. Can't wait to meet this guy, Killer smirked. Wait, you're going back? Said the mayor. Of course, we came to your world to meet Sans. We ought to do that since we're already in this deep, said Nightmare. All right, but seriously, be careful. He will try to kill you if he sees you. I think me and Night can handle ourselves, Killer smirked. In a few moments, 2 waitresses brought out huge trays of food, distributing overflowing plates at the booths. Savory smells filled the air. The bird monsters began eating ravenously and started to cry. It's real! It's real food! I never tasted anything so heavenly! The dog guard, however, was still looking after Grilby, helping him to eat. His hands were shaking and he could barely hold the silverware. Here, let me help you, she said. As the mayor and Rabbit Woman started to eat, tears came to their eyes. Nightmare could feel a flood of relief washing over years of pain in their souls. Killer, on the other hand, happily munched on small bites of his chocolate chip pancakes. Nightmare, too, was finally glad to get some breakfast in his mouth after this long morning. Despite finding something he liked, Nightmare saw Killer wasn't eating that much. It had him worried about his lack of appetite, as he might be worried when Dream became ill in the same way. Is that going to be enough for you? Don't worry about me, boss. I'm just savoring it. Killer smiled. Oh, just some advice if you're going after Sans, the mayor said, mouth half full. If you take some food with you, you might be able to distract him long enough to do whatever it is you plan to do. I would suggest a burger with lots of ketchup. Ah, good idea, thanks, Nightmare nodded. And whatever you do, don't bring him here, said the rabbit. I don't think any of us could stand to see him again. Sure, we won't. Once Nightmare was full, he bid farewell to the monsters, wishing them luck in their new lives. He paid the bill with enough gold to cover both the waitresses' paychecks for a week. He ordered a burger to go, which was delivered to him before they left. Stepping back outside, the clouds had cleared to show a warm sun overhead. Birds singing. Killer was taken back a moment, staring at the sky as Nightmare reopened the portal. Soon they were standing back in the freezing darkness of Snowdon. The lights in Grilby's had gone out, leaving stillness in the air. You know, having a conversation with those guys was nice, said Killer. I haven't been able to do that for a long time. Yeah, it was, Nightmare smiled. Hey, Killer, you mind promising me something? Huh? I know the circumstances you came from, but promise me you'll avoid hurting any monsters. Humans are fair game, you can do anything you want, but I want to avoid hurting monsters as much as possible. Does that make sense? Heh, you got a soft heart, don't you? Thinking about all the people he'd heard so far, it wasn't something he saw himself as, soft-hearted. I don't think so. It's just, monsters can't be as terrible as humans, that's all. Monsters can still be pretty terrible, boss. Just then, Nightmare felt a spike of rage coming from within Grilby's. Looking back, a huff of warm air escaped the darkened doorway. There was the faintest glow of a red eye before a massive skeleton rammed against the threshold. The sound of splintering wood accompanying a roar as this world's Sans bursted through, armed with a giant axe. Adorned with a long, fluffy, but tattered coat and a massive, cracked-open skull, Sans came charging at them, swinging his weapon. Oh, shit! Killer dodged faster than Nightmare could, who found himself physically hit to the ground rather than sink into his shadow. Something about how the darkness interacted with the snow confused his magic. Nightmare yelped, barely rolling away as the axe came down at him. Killer leapt on Sans's back, stabbing him several times before the giant was able to throw him off. It gave Nightmare time to get to his feet and try to grab Sans with his roots. Though he was able to restrain the tall skeleton for a moment, Sans's strength pushed against his hold. With both hands, he grabbed Nightmare's roots and began pulling him closer. Ah, wait, no! Killer, help! Killer seemed hesitant, though. He wanted to help Nightmare, but also he must have internalized what Nightmare had just told him about hurting monsters. On the ground, the to-go box had stumbled out of the bag and flipped open. Quickly, Killer grabbed the contents and threw it at Sans's face like a baseball. Cheeseburger, I choose you! Splitting open just before it hit Sans's face, cheeseburger, mayo, mustard, and most of all, ketchup splattered all over the skeleton's face. Nightmare felt an instant break in Sans's rage. A pause for confusion, then realization. The glowing red eye in his left socket disappeared as Sans went into blind desperation. Throwing off Nightmare's roots, he fell to his knees, ravaging the broken parts of the burger off the ground, shoveling it into his mouth. The whimpers and grunts that escaped the skeleton's throat made Nightmare's soul shudder. In seconds, the burger was completely gone. Sans wiped the condiments from his face, aggressively licking his fingers. Hey, buddy. Killer leaned over, but kept his distance. We know what you really want, but you have to play nice if you want to get it. Food! More food! Sans said, somewhere between a plea and a threat. We can get you more food, said Nightmare. Brushing the snow off his hoodie, he stepped closer to Killer. But you have to promise not to hurt us, all right? Sans growled and grunted. He swayed, gripping his knees so strongly they might start bleeding. Hungry! Please, more! Is he going to be able to contain himself? Killer tilted his brow. I'll repeat myself only once more. Promise you won't harm us, and we'll get you more food. A few more grunts escaped the brute, as though it were taking him a moment to remember how to communicate. He gave a few aggressive nods, his hands still clutching his knees. All right, hold tight for us then, said Nightmare, drawing out his code circle. We'll find you something soon. Not another diner, I hope. Please tell me you can change it up a bit, said Killer, putting his hands in his pockets. Right, I guess another diner would be excessive for one day. Let me search for something in one of the higher energy planes. It took a moment, but Nightmare found something he felt was suitable for their situation. Killer kept his sockets fixed hard on Sans, as the hungry skeleton glared at Nightmare in anticipation. Finally, Nightmare drew open a portal from which the sounds of a happy crowd emerged, along with birdsong and a warm spring breeze. The Dark Guardian stepped through first, followed by Killer. Instantly, they were both hit with the aroma of sweet meats and savory spices. They were standing just outside the entrance to a park where humans and monsters came and went, some stopping to look at the strange skeletons in their portal. Overhead hung a banner which read, 10th Annual Burrito and Taco Festival. Huh, neat, said Killer. Before Nightmare had the chance to call after Sans, he came rushing through the portal, following the smell of meat. However, his momentum was stopped by the bright light of the afternoon sun, giving Nightmare time to grab his arms with his roots. Now hold on there, buddy. Don't rush it, or you're going to ruin your chance to get fed. As Sans' sight adjusted, his gaze looked around at the regular people. Is he okay? Said a man walking past, carrying a platter of tacos. He screamed as Sans ripped the platter away, inhaling the contents of the food basket. Sans, damn it, said Nightmare, using another root to restrain Sans' head. He walked around the giant, handing the man a few coins. Sorry about that. Big guy's insanely hungry, if you know what I mean. The man was stunned as he was handed the compensation, but still ran off screaming after a second. Are you folks with them skeleton brothers? Said a tall green monster with buggy eyes, holding the hand of a short pink monster in a tutu. No, but you mind telling us who you're referring to? Said Nightmare, looking at the pair. Oh yeah, there's two skeletons making tacos at the festival. Got a big bone hanging over their booth, you can't miss it. The green monster pointed into the park. Really, boss? Another Sans? Killer huffed. Hey, indulge me, okay? Come on, big guy, let's get you some tacos, said Nightmare, patting Sans' arm as he loosened his roots. As they headed into the park, both Sanses walked slightly ahead so they could keep an eye on him. Remember, look for the booth with a bone over it, Nightmare reminded him. His last stolen serving must have kept his mind steady enough to follow directions. Well, if we're meeting another Sans, we can't keep going on calling our friend Sans here, said Killer. What should we call him? Well, if we're following the theme of our names, Nightmare, Killer, why not just call him Horror since he's from Horrortale? Nightmare folded his arms. That's lazy, boss. Do you have a suggestion? Hey, big guy, what do you want us to call you? Said Killer, tapping his arm. The brute stopped momentarily, arching his head down to stare at Killer. Horror is fine. Maybe it was the way he stopped to address it, or the fact he'd been paying attention that sent a shiver down their spines. Okay, Horror it is, geez. Killer shrugged, letting the skeleton continue his search. They received a few looks from the crowd. Nightmare thought at first it might be the fact that they were a party of skeletons. Then he realized it was more likely because Horror's clothes were partially rags and their own were stained in blood. We should get new clothes soon, Nightmare mumbled. Soon enough they found a large blue and white striped booth with a bone hanging above. A painted sign said, Bon Appetit! It had a short line. Several dog monsters' former guards worked the booth, cooking meat and assembling orders. A menu hung to the side of the booth displaying various flavors and items. What caught their attention was an illustration of a tall cone structure, a symbol purely of tacos, dubbed the Legendary Taco Tower. Nightmare and Killer looked at each other, giving a knowing smirk. Hey there, what's up, fella bone men? Came a lazy-sounding voice from behind them. Standing there, Nightmare recognized this was a papyrus, but it was the first one he'd ever met in person. Though he was taller than them, he stood in a hunched position, wearing an orange hoodie and a loosely tied apron. One hand rested in his pocket, while the other carried a tray of cups with taco meat. Want to try our flavors before you order? Already sensing a growl from Horror, Nightmare put up his roots to block his path to the samples. No thanks. I think we know what we want. Killer, however, stared at the papyrus. His sockets widened as the black liquid started dripping heavily down his cheeks. You okay, buddy? Acting like you saw a ghost or something, Papyrus said to Killer. Yeah, Killer stuttered. Papyrus blinked and shrugged. Alright, I hope you like our tacos, he said before approaching another potential customer. Killer, you alright? Nightmare asked as Killer wiped the tears on his sleeve. Yeah, I'll be okay. Killer hung his head with a smile. Welcome to the most magnificent taco booth in town! Enthusiastically cried the Sans, taking orders as they reached the front. What can we get you fine folks today? The Sans also wore an apron along with a tall chef's hat, a blue scarf, and a gray shirt. He was also adorned in an assembly of pieces from the Royal Guard's armor. His bright blue eyelights fixed on Nightmare's gaze, exuding a level of charm that almost reminded him too much of his brother. We would like the taco tower, please. What? Really? Oh gosh, you're the first person to ask for it! Sans put his gloves to his cheeks. Absolutely, sir. It'll take about 20 minutes to assemble. Boss, that might be a lot to ask, said Killer, pointing a thumb back at Horror, who was drooling as he zoned out. I don't think he's gonna last much longer. Clearing his throat, Nightmare leaned against the counter, getting closer to the Sans. Hey, listen, our buddy here is murderously hungry, yeah? So, if you wouldn't mind, could you just give us the tacos as they're being made? Huh? Oh. Sans's grin faded. I could, but I was really hoping to get a picture of the tower with our first customer to buy it. Is 20 minutes really going to be too long? I can wait, Horror grumbled. Nightmare and Killer both looked up at him. Can you? Nightmare questioned, tilting a brow. Horror gave a slow nod. I'll wait. Really? Thank you so much. It's going to be a great picture, I'm sure of it, said Sans, his eyelights turning to stars. Nightmare sighed and paid for their order before heading to one of the side tables to wait. However, before reaching their seat, Nightmare felt a surge of negative energy in his spine rippling through his roots. A deep sorrow, but it wasn't coming from anywhere in this world. Boss, you okay? Said Killer, noticing Nightmare hadn't sat down. Yeah. Killer, mind waiting here for a moment with Horror? I'll be back in 5-10 minutes tops. Wait, you're leaving me here with... But as Killer spoke, Nightmare sank into the shadow under the table and disappeared. Leaving this AU named Underswap, he would shoot down through the fibers of the world tree, following the wave of sorrow. Without reading anything about this new world, he entered through the shadow of a collapsed wall. The air was heavy with smoke, the sound of raging flames burned all around him. Crawling out from the table, Nightmare found himself in a familiar ballroom, but the ceiling had gone missing. Above hung a full moon and the stars being covered by the rising smoke. Across the room, dozens of bodies laid, human soldiers in empty suits of armor filled with the piles of dust. The aura of death hung heavy here. However, he knew he'd been pulled to this place from the emotions of this world's sands, which couldn't be too far away. In the center of the battlefield, Nightmare noticed an armored skeleton laying on his back. As he approached, working his way around the bodies, Nightmare was sure he found the source of the sorrow. The skeletal knight had a black eye and was still bleeding from his mouth. Having pulled his sword to his chest, he seemed prepared to die. He didn't notice Nightmare's approach until the dark skeleton covered his mouth with an arm and coughed. The knight opened his sockets, white eyelights focusing on Nightmare. Whew, you're alive, he said before coughing as well, choking on blood. There was the head of a mace embedded in the knight's breastplate, which had smashed his ribs. What do you mean? Said Nightmare, crouching down. Everyone's dead. I looked everywhere. The knight gasped for breath. All our people are dead. Humans killed them. I should get you out of here. You don't look so good. No, save yourself. The Nightmare shook his head. I'm not gonna make it. Nonsense. Take my hand. I can save you if you trust me. The calm in Nightmare's voice perplexed him, but without much choice, the knight took his hand. All right. I'm Cross. Cross? Nightmare smiled. I'm Nightmare. Nice to meet you. In seconds, they sank into Cross's shadow before appearing under the table back in Underswap. Nightmare bumped his head as they came back through. Killer and Horror felt their feet disturbed. Whoa, what the hell? Killer looked under the table. A healer! I need a healer! Nightmare cried out, crawling his way from under the table with Killer's help. Another one? Said Killer, as Nightmare used his roots to drag Cross out from under the table. The knight looked around, surprised and confused. Some of the festival guests gasped in alarm at the blood leaking from the skeleton. Healer! Did you say healer? Said a yellow flower with a face suddenly popping out of the ground. Howdy, I'm Flowey! Flowey is a good healer! We could heal him, yep, yep! All of a sudden, a dozen of the flowers popped up around Cross, making him jump in fright. Howdy, I'm Flowey! Howdy, I'm Flowey! Get that armor off! Get it off! Said the flowers, lifting Cross up with their vines. Wait, hold on! Started Cross, but he was cut off by coughing up more blood. The crowd started to gather around as the flowers took off Cross's breastplate, exposing the horrid wound under his blood-soaked shirt. But in seconds, the dozen or so flowers healed the skeleton with their magic. Killer whistled. Damn, you certainly found an interesting one. Is everything all right? Said an Asgore approaching them. It caught Nightmare a little off guard, feeling a sting in his soul to look at his father figure's likeness. Yes, sir, everything's fine, just an accident. He held up his hands. My, that's a lot of blood. You all look awful. Here, I'll grab some spare t-shirts from our booth, said the Asgore, heading back through the crowd. Nightmare sighed before he knelt down next to Cross. Feeling better? What was that? Where am I? Who? But the knight went silent as he looked all around him, monster and human faces staring back. Nightmare patted his back gently. You'll be alright now. You're in a new world. Hungry? We're about to get the motherload of tacos. You saved my life, said Cross, as Nightmare helped him to his feet. How can I ever repay you? Well, I've been looking for some new friends. Want to travel with us? This is Killer and Horror, my other two companions. Heh, welcome to the Friend Club. What are we calling this one, boss? Said Killer as he sat back down, leaning with his elbows on the table. Calling? Oh, right, I'm Cross. Nice to meet you, said the knight, holding out a hand covered in a gauntlet. Killer tilted his brow, smirking, but didn't accept the handshake. Cross. It doesn't really fit in with the whole villain vibe we got going on. You sure this one won't be a party pooper? He said, looking at Nightmare. Nightmare shrugged. Don't know, but I couldn't just leave him to die. If it doesn't work out between us, I'll figure something out. I am so confused, said Cross, whose head seemed to be spinning from all the new information. Just take a seat, Nightmare said, a hand on his shoulder as they both sat at the table. Hey there, fellas, said the Asgore, returning through the crowd, although it seemed some of the attention on them was finally dying. I brought you these t-shirts to cover up those awful stains. I hope they're everyone's sizes, free of charge. Oh, thank you so much, Nightmare nodded. Enjoy the festival, he said before walking off. There were a set of 4 t-shirts, all cyan color with the white logo of the Burrito and Taco Festival on them. Killer picked up one like it was a dirty rag. This is so not my color. However, as Horror grabbed the large size, he sniffed it. Taking off his coat, he wiggled the shirt over his tattered clothes. It was a little small, but didn't match the look of the giant, ravaged skeleton. However, Nightmare sensed that he was pleased by the gift. Grabbing a shirt also, Nightmare thought about it a moment, then decided to put it on as he took off his hoodie. We're really gonna wear these, boss? Killer tilted his brow. As Nightmare was doing so, Horror's teeth turned up in a grin. Just put the damn shirt on, said Nightmare. Killer obeyed, but groaned. Cross also put on the shirt. However, as Nightmare fit the top over his clothes, the dark blight sank into the fibers, turning into the same color as the rest of his body. The Taco Tower is ready! Said Sans, rolling out the tall tower, assembled with pieces that would normally be used for a large wedding cake. Papyrus and 2 of the dog guards helped with the cart to make sure it didn't tip over and to lift it onto their table. Horror's eyes widened, transfixed on the food. Now hold on, let me get a picture! Papyrus, here, take the camera! Said Sans, handing the Polaroid to the taller skeleton. Papyrus? Said Cross, who hadn't yet got the multiverse explained to him. Everyone get ready, pose and say tacos! Said Sans, kneeling in front of the table, his arms out wide. Killer stood to make a peace sign. Nightmare leaned back slightly so Cross could be seen in the picture. Tacos! They all said. Click! Brrr. Papyrus took the picture as the camera printed it out. He took it, shaking it lightly. All right, second one for the customers, he said, aiming the camera again. 3, 2, 1. Tacos! With the second picture taken, Papyrus handed both to Sans, who grinned in delight. They look great! Here you go! Thank you for being awesome customers! He said, handing the picture to the Nightmare. Before the picture was in his hand, Horror began shoveling several of the tacos into his mouth. Grinning at the picture, all of them together, Nightmare handed it over to Cross, who eventually handed it over to Killer. This will be perfect for the scrapbook. You have a scrapbook? Cross blinked. Not yet, said Killer, putting the picture in his jacket. We should get some new clothes soon. I think all of us could use it, said Nightmare. Eat, Horror suddenly said, handing a taco to Killer. Oh, no, I'm not hungry, said Killer. Eat, Horror growled. Yikes, okay. The smaller skeleton took the taco, observing it a moment before taking a small bite. Eat, Horror demanded, looking to the others. Oh, thank you, Cross nodded before grabbing one for himself. Horror stared at Nightmare a moment as he hadn't reached for one yet. I had a big breakfast, the dark skeleton shrugged. A taco in hand, Horror lurched forward, slowly pressing it towards Nightmare's mouth. Okay, I'll have one, Nightmare sighed, taking the taco in hand. The more Horror ate, the more Nightmare sensed his nerves relax. His pace slowed as he became more sated and aware of his behavior. Horror managed to consume 3/4 of the whole tower on his own, though Cross had eaten quite a handful as well. The knight eventually asked Nightmare more questions about what was going on, and he'd give the usual rundown about traveling the multiverse to find friends, especially friends who shared the same malice towards humans as he did. The humans, said Cross before looking around. The crowd was a mix of humans and monsters living at peace. In this world, humans and monsters have managed to get along, said Nightmare. We won't start any trouble here. Cross hung his head, setting down the taco he had. The humans came to slaughter us all, to steal the land and everything we have. I don't think I'm ready to trust them, even if they are peaceful here. Yeah, I can understand that, said Killer, leaning on his arms. Did that happen to you two also? Said Cross, directing the questions towards Horror and Nightmare. I'm not ready to talk about it. Horror grumbled, his voice more calm and clear. Yeah, I don't think I want to think about it. Nightmare looked away. Promise, I'll tell you about it later. I'm expecting at least one more person to join our party. Once they do, I'll tell you then.